Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Greetings, Internet, and welcome to another episode of Side Quests. I am this week's returning host, Insane Ian. I am a comedy musician and comedy music reactor now. I love all things video games. I do comedy music about video games and comic books and all sorts of other nerdy things. And I'm back to talk about another Konami game. Previously, I was on this show speaking about my all-time favorite game, Snatcher, for the Sega CD. But before I found Snatcher, my favorite game was a game for the classic Nintendo Entertainment System. It was Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, for the NES. I love this game. You know, I had been a big fan of the first Castlevania game, which is, you know, it's a platformer game. It is, you know, you're walking along, you're Simon Belmont in the original Castlevania, and you're trying to stop Dracula from taking over and terrorizing the town. But in Castlevania 3, you're actually playing as one of Simon Belmont's ancestors. You're playing as Trevor Belmont, 100 years before the first Castlevania game. And, you know, this is the impetus of what started the whole Castlevania franchise, technically, as far as, like, you know, the whole blood feud and rivalry between the House of Belmont and Dracula himself, and of course, Dracula's family. In this game, you're questing along to stop Dracula from terrorizing Wallachia, and you know, you're called into action by the church because he's started to ravage the whole countryside with monsters and creatures and things, and the Belmont clan is known for being, you know, having superhuman power or something like that. So they are, you know, been tasked to stop Dracula. And I liked Castlevania 3 a lot more than the previous Castlevania games. Actually, I had honestly never even played 2. I played the first Castlevania, and then I played the third Castlevania, and I liked 3 a lot more than the first one because this was the first time, in my mind, at least, you know, when the game came out, that there were not just multiple paths you could take to the end, but also multiple characters that you could meet up with and use on your quote-unquote team. There are 4 characters total in the game. But there are 3 extra characters that you can team up with depending on which paths you take as you go through the levels. You know, every level you play a level or so, and then you have a branching path, and sometimes that path will lead you to a different person to team up with. Now, if you team up with one person, I think you have to like lose the person that you had already teamed up with if there is an intersecting path, but usually there isn't. And because there are multiple characters, that means there are multiple endings to this game, too. And this was, you know, for my tiny little 9-year-old mind, this blew it. You know, hey, this game is so expansive. This gives me replay value for my game. There are different endings. You know, you have your 3 characters. You have your 3 other characters other than Trevor. You've got Sifa Belnades, who is a young sorceress who is posing as a monk when you meet them. You have Grant Dynasty, who is a pirate who has the ability to climb on walls and change direction in mid-jump, which for a Castlevania game was kind of big. You know, Castlevania was kind of known for the clunky jump in it. It's kind of got its own arc. You can't really change direction in midair. You're not Mario. You can't change direction midair when you jump, but Grant could, and that was an important distinction and gave you access to areas you couldn't get otherwise using Grant. And Sypha used magic spells, so there was a lot of distance in their attacks. And then, of course, the third character, Alucard. You could play as Dracula's son, Alucard, in the game, who could shoot fireballs and turn into a bat. And you could use that to get to other hard-to-reach places, kind of like Grant did, only with less climbing. You could just fly up there. And of course, Alucard is just Dracula spelled backwards, so it was kind of like having somebody on the opposite team on your team. It had its basic Castlevania formula where you've got your character, Trevor Belmont, with his whip, and you pick up other extra weapons that you use for, like, you have either the holy water, or the daggers, or the axe that had the arc, or you had the little time stopwatch occasionally that would eliminate everything on screen, and you had the cross, which acted like a boomerang for some reason. But all these other characters could pick up different things too, and Sypho could pick up different spells for long-range attacks. An ice spell or a fire spell or what have you, and things of that nature for each of the different characters. It was definitely kind of a deeper game as far as combat and traversal and exploration than I had seen on the NES up to that point. It was originally... What year was this? I don't even remember what year it came out. 1990 is when Castlevania 3 came out, so I was 11. I just remember playing this game so much and just being blown away by how unique and diverse the gameplay was, and just the idea of it having multiple endings was just so new to me. Like, there's 4 different endings in the game. You can have the ending if you beat it with any of the different characters. If you beat the game with Grant, it's a different ending. Having them in your party, you don't actually have to use them to defeat the final boss, but if you have any of the different characters in your party, you get a different ending based on that, and if you have no one in your party, you get a different ending there too. So there's 4 different endings because of the 4 characters. And, kind of separately from what has happened with the previous game that I mentioned, Snatcher is a little hard for most players nowadays to come across unless you go to some more, shall we say, illicit websites. But luckily, Konami has given a little bit more love to the Castlevania series. It was their flagship series for a number of years, and released recently a Castlevania Anniversary Collection for modern consoles that had all of the mainline NES titles, as well as the Super NES, the Genesis game, and a handful of others. And so, like, playing Castlevania 3 is a little easier now for some people. I will say, when I played it back in the day, I apparently was a much better gamer when I was 11, because I beat this game, I remember, quite often, and with barely any trouble. And I tried to play it again recently to prepare myself for this podcast, and man, if it weren't for save states, I would not have gotten through it. And thankfully, the collection has save states. But yeah, it's like any Castlevania game. It gets brutally difficult as you traverse through it. But I loved this game. I think I beat 3 before I beat the first one. But playing through the third game got me used to the idea of how the game performs, and I was able to go back and beat the first one. But Castlevania 3 is kind of such a landmark title, too, because it kind of gave the idea of, hey, we've got a popular series here, let's explore the mythology more, instead of just being about Simon. Let's see what his ancestors did. Why is there this legacy with the Belmonts? So much so, in fact, that the Netflix animated Castlevania series is based on this game and Trevor. And Alucard appears in it, Sypha appears in it, and there were kind of a loose sequel to this game on the PlayStation 2, featuring Trevor and company. But this was the main one that inspired the Netflix animated series. So if you haven't seen that, definitely check that out as well. And of course, it inspires me because I have always loved the Castlevania games, so much so to the point that I made a Castlevania song recently on my newest album. Yeah, there's a tie-in for you. Anyway, I just wanted to say how much I really, really love Castlevania 3 as a game, the whole Castlevania series, and I love that there's been an availability to these games now, because not just the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, but they also just recently released the Castlevania Advance Collection, featuring the 3 Game Boy Advance games, as well as, for the first time in one of those collections, the Dracula X game for Super Nintendo, which is slightly different than the game it's based on, Rondo of Blood, which was released on the TurboGrafx 16, but only in Japan. Dracula X was a loose version of that game, but that's now included on that collection. So you can play through a whole history of Castlevania games, because 2021 was the 35th anniversary of the Castlevania series. And what better way to do it, to celebrate it, than with those games? It's a much better way to celebrate it than the way that Konami is currently trying to get people to celebrate it, with NFTs. Anyway, so, yeah, go out, get the anniversary collection, and play through Castlevania 3. I'm saying, even if you have never played any Castlevania games before, start with Castlevania 3, because chronologically, it's the first. Anyway, this has been Insane Ian. You can find my stuff at insaneian.bandcamp.com or see my videos at youtube.com/insaneian. And until next time, happy gaming.
Hey there, Screen Beans. Have you heard about Screen Snark?
Rachel, this is an ad break. They aren't Screen Beans until they listen to the show.
Fine. Potential Screen Beans. You like movies and TV shows, right?
I mean, who doesn't? Screen Snark is a casual conversation about the movies and television shows that are shaping us as we live our everyday lives.
That's right, Matt. We have a chat with at least one incredible guest every episode, hailing from all walks. We've interviewed chefs,
writers, costumers, musicians,
yoga teachers, comedians, burlesque dancers,
folks in the film and TV industry,
and more.
We'd be delighted for you to join us every other Monday on the Certain POV Podcast Network.
Or wherever you get your podcasts, fresh and tasty off the presses.
What? That's not...
Can I call them Screen Beans now?
Fine.
Screen Beans!
So tune in and we'll see you at the movies or on a couch somewhere.
'Cause you're all Screen Beans now.
You will be mine. Aurora.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.